for your own knowledge. Okay. Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a webinar titled Emotional Impact of Adoption on the Parents. My name is Heather Sloan, and I'm the director of the Post-Adoption Connection Center here at Nightlight. I focus on support for families and children after placements and adoptions happen. We do webinars similar to this every other month, and all of them are recorded and put on our YouTube channel. So you are welcome to go to Nightlight's YouTube page and look up, there's a playlist for Post-Adoption Connection Center where you can view past videos that we've done on a variety of different topics. Today, we're going to be focusing on how to recognize signs of grief for you as an adoptive or foster parent, learn how your grief can lead to something called blocked care, and then talk through resources for support for you and your own emotional, mental, kind of body health, and how to work through the emotions that are coming up as you have begun parenting. So you may have more recently brought a child into your home, or they maybe have been there for a long time. So a lot of these feelings, these emotions can come up from day one to day 1 million, right? It's at any point, depending on what's going on in the relationship with your child or what's even going on inside you, right? So I talk with families where some of these emotions and the grief and the blocked care that we'll talk about today comes up because of behaviors going on within their child or what is occurring in their relationship and their attachment and connection. Or it could just fully be on your side as the parent that, you know, some of this is you can't understand because the kid's fine. Everyone says they're great, but you can feel something is off and you feel like something is wrong inside you. And that's really what we want to focus on today. So what is grief? So this may not be where you thought we'd start the presentation today, but this has been something I have put a lot of attention in my training and education and support for families. We talk a lot and try to train you as families to expect what grief will happen and look like when a child from the child, right, from the adoptee that or the foster child that we know has lost all of these things, and we expect there to be grief in them. But families don't always realize that you will also grieve your other children that were already in your home or even are grown up and out of your home. They will likely go through some elements of grief. And we don't put a lot of attention on that because we don't always understand what that is. Our culture generally here in the US does not grieve well. We don't grieve losses well in wherever that loss is coming from. So I want to start kind of first talking through what this definition is and break down some of these words. So this is kind of a basic definition. You know, I got off Google. This intense emotional, physical, and mental anguish resulting from a significant loss. So first, kind of with that word intense, right? So what this could look like is, because we're going deeper than just feeling sad, than feeling bummed out, right? This is a deeper place of emotion resulting from loss. So these feelings are more intense. That means they're pervasive. They're consuming, just on your mind all the time. Maybe some of your emotional reactions are very extreme, where, hey, this is a situation where you should feel a little irritated, but instead you're enraged, right? So something more intense. Or inappropriate for the situation, right? Kind of in that same scenario. Hey, this is a mildly irritating and annoying situation, but you're acting like it's a great offense, right? That's how your body and your emotions and your mind is reacting. Next is that emotional and physical and mental, right? So these are impacts not just on the emotional side, but there are body impacts. We'll talk a lot about that today in this presentation. We all kind of know, right, that stress and emotions can start to affect our physical bodies. We can see it manifest physically. And if you can't always see it, it's always something to start to pay attention to. Because sometimes those physical manifestations is our first clue that there's something going on inside, right? This is our body saying, I've been trying to get your attention. Now it's going to start coming out in your physical body because you need to see that something is wrong inside. Something needs attention and help inside. And there's mental impacts of grief on our thoughts, our kind of cognitive abilities. You know, if you're to stay focused, to remember things, grief can impact those cognitive functions. And then the next is that word anguish, right? So this is not just being sad, right? This Grief goes much deeper than just some of the kind of typical basic level emotions that we have, right? Grief is more, right? And so it's important to recognize that, because it's easy to dismiss our own feelings or have others dismiss our feelings. Oh, you're just sad. And to say, no, this is more than that. This is grief. It goes deeper. And then they result from a significant loss. And that's something I want to spend some time kind of challenging you to think about today. Maybe this is something you sit down later with your spouse, with a friend, to kind of talk through and really give yourself space to think about the things that you have lost since becoming a foster or adoptive parent. It's very easy for our attention to go on everything that you have gained through this process. You've gained this child, you've gained this dream, being able to complete this adoption or this fostering experience. But it is also okay to be excited about the things you've gained and also acknowledge that emotional and physical and mental toll of the losses that have also happened. So, what are things that you have lost? Maybe start to think about that. I'm going to give you some thoughts and ideas on that. And then I again want to challenge you to really stop and think about the things you've lost, even taking some of these categories you see on the screen and going deeper into your own life. What has it looked like to lose my free time? What was I able to do on a whim whenever I wanted to do it? The you know, the ideas and the spontaneity that I had, that's gone. Now everything has to be planned because I now have a child for the first time, or the child that has come into my home needs that routine more deeply than maybe my biological children, right? I'm more spontaneous. My biological children are more spontaneous, and this adopted child needs a lot more structure. So you've lost some of that ability, even within your family, kind of what free time looks in your family. You may have lost time with your spouse, right? That these routines that you've been in and times that you've been able to be together. Maybe after bedtime, that was your time to connect, but now you've got this child in your home that bedtime is a struggle. Getting them to bed is a hassle. You've got to be in there with them. They can't be alone. They wake up constantly. So you're tired, and that's taking up time that you would normally have with your spouse. Or maybe foster parents, you are used to a weekly date night and you can just get any babysitter. But now that you're fostering, it has to be this approved person that's gone through all of the requirements to be a babysitter for you. And you don't have that ability to just go get the date nights that you're used to. Or you don't feel comfortable leaving your child. You're afraid to leave your child alone with somebody, maybe because of their behavior, things that you've seen them do. So you don't get dates. You haven't been on dates in a really long time because you don't feel comfortable leaving them with anyone. Looking, ways that you have lost in time with your other children, right? I always kind of challenge people to think about, we all have 24 hours in a day, every single one of us, right? And I think about that as a pie chart. And these different segments of this pie chart, you had all these different segments of how your time was spent, right? With sleep, with work, with each child, with your spouse, with friends, with church, with your personal activities, working out, cooking, all of these different things. And in order to create a new slice of that pie, other segments of that pie have to shrink. And often that impacts other kids that you've already had in your home. You're used to being able to spend the time that you've been doing with your child, and now that is less, and you feel that impact and your kids feel that impact. Then maybe you're seeing some of their grief from losing that time and that access to you that they used to have. And then that's increasing your own grief, right? Bringing up other emotions inside you. You may have lost money, right? So even though you're putting this toward a good cause, right, it's still a loss, right? We all only have the money that we have, and we used to be able to put that money one way, and it can't do that anymore. We had a family one time that had adopted two kids. They didn't have children in their home before, and now they were suddenly parents, and this was a foster type situation. And the adoptive parent was grieving, in our opinion, was grieving. And a lot of that grief was kind of focused in anger around money, and that, she couldn't go to this restaurant that they always used to go to because it was so much more expensive now with children. And that was something that she was very legitimately upset by with her. That wasn't just like a joking, oh, and I can't even go there and spend less money. It was something that she was truly upset about. And I would say that's where her her grief was kind of focusing on something tangible. But it's important to stop and go, but that's real, right? But she knew, hey, a treat I could give myself. I've got $20 to spend. I can run by this restaurant and get a fun lunch and go get a coffee somewhere else. And I've spent my 20. Now $20 doesn't buy me hardly anything at this restaurant when I've got the kids with me, right? So that's a loss. And it's okay to acknowledge that as such. You may lose sleep, right? That either because the kids need more help in the night, they're waking up in the night, they're getting up earlier, or you're just stressed out, right? And it's disturbing your sleep. Losing your mental peace. You've had a routine before that child came into your home, or maybe even since that child has been in your home, but then circumstances or development and the child has like changed it a little bit. And now you are finding yourself in a place where things that were easy and peaceful, that you didn't have as much of a mental load burden, is now suddenly so much more, and you have to think about these things, and there's so much effort that goes into thinking through the schedule that you've lost a lot of that mental peace. Losing the routine of family life, what you're used to and the rhythms that your family follows easily, that are just inherent, that you all just automatically do and fall into because it's always how it's been. And then this brand new person comes in and disrupts that, right? And that's okay. That's what you knew was going to happen, but you don't always understand really what the emotional kind of impact of that might be. And that's grief and loss. Or maybe known expectations, right? Of what you were hoping to have with this child. This is the daughter I've wanted, and this is what we're going to do together. This is the son I've wanted. This is what we're going to do together. And I worked with a family that, from the referral, it looked like the kids really like to play games, and that's what the parents like to do. And so in their mind, they had built up, oh, this is going to be so fun. We're going to get to teach them all these games that we like to play, and we're going to have such a great time as a family. And then by the time they got the kids home, the kids were a little bit older. They're getting into preteen ages. And suddenly they realize, oh, these kids don't like games. Maybe they did before, but now they're a little bit older, and now they're into other things that preteens are into as they start to get into their teenage years. And those are things that the parents weren't necessarily excited about. And so that breakdown started to really happen, and those parents needing to grieve that loss. You thought you were getting kids that wanted to do these activities and have this commonality with you. And then that ended up not being the reality. And so the grief and the emotions that were stirred up in that was really keeping those parents stuck and not able to move forward, which is kind of what the grieving process is. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the stages of grief. Okay, so it's important to note that these are not linear. Okay, so you don't walk through these stages. I'm kind of following what Kubler-Ross has very famously laid out in the stages of grief. This is kind of the main stuff people work with and work off of. There's a couple of other ones that folks have added along the years, but this is kind of the model we're using here today. It's not linear. You can jump forward, you can jump back, you can cycle in one or two of them over and over for a long time. Ideally, what we are trying to work toward in somewhat of a linear fashion is we're moving toward acceptance, right? So that acceptance being there at the end. But even as I say that, you might get to a place of acceptance, and then something new kind of unearths or changes, and you're kind of back into the other stages again. So it's not always linear. It's not always complete and ended once you kind of hit acceptance. It certainly can be ongoing. And even taking this grief model and putting it into other losses, right? We typically talk about grief in the context of the death of a loved one, right? And that is very true. That's very much true. And that's the biggest place where we kind of see this play out. But it's also important to recognize that all of these transitions in life, just these shifts, I can think about my life in different stages where I really had to walk through grief, right? Leaving home to go to college. And then after graduating college, I stayed in the town where our college was, and all my friends moved away or got married. And so I had to start over with relationships and finding a new place for myself in the city where I had lost so much of my community. And there was so much grief that was happening there for me. Losses of friendships over time, moving, even getting married, right? The loss of that freedom that I had before I was married, and then having children, the loss of the freedom that I had, and all of those changes. Really had to stop and give some attention. And especially becoming a parent for myself was a place where I really started to dig into and understand, what does grief look like in these other contexts outside of just the death of a loved one? And how can I recognize that as a way to move forward toward healing? That's what I'm trying to share with you guys today. And why this matters is because staying in this grief, right? Staying in anger, staying in depression, in denial, will only keep you cycling in the negative emotions and the negative thoughts, and what's going on in your emotions, your mind, and your body. But being able to move toward acceptance helps you as a parent. It may not change your circumstances. Your child may act the exact same way, but it's moving toward an acceptance, right? So we'll talk about that here. Okay, so some statements and what denial might look like for you as a foster or adoptive parent, things I've heard families say that are pretty common. And I'm sure, again, I challenge you to take this into some time when you can process and think, what are these thoughts of denial that I've been having about my circumstance with my child and where I am? It's important to start to label these, because it takes it outside of, this is all my child's fault and this is all our circumstances' fault, and there's nothing that I can do about that. Labeling it and understanding the emotions and the grief that's going on gives you somewhere to start to move forward. So putting labels on things really is helpful in understanding more of what's happening, especially inside you. So some statements of denial: things will get better, I just need to push through this, right? Or this is just a phase. Those can be statements of acceptance when we're using them in a hopeful, like, this is a phase, I can move through this, I have the strength, I have the capabilities, God will give me what I need, I'm going to push into this and push through it. When it's used in denial is where it becomes problematic of, okay, well, I just need to push through this. I just need to not think about it. Just push it out of my mind and not deal with it, not dwell on it at all, not process, not give any attention to it, is where that becomes problematic, right? Because it's still building up. We're still feeling that grief, but the denial is keeping us from working through it and actually acknowledging it. Feeling anger, right? This child has ruined my family. And this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought I was doing. This is not the child I thought I was getting. I hate these circumstances. I hate what's going on. Statements around bargaining or thoughts around bargaining that can help you kind of identify that. This is always kind of a trickier one, but it's that if then, right? If I just read one more book, if I just watched one more webinar, then I'll be able to fix this. I'll find the strategies that I'm looking for. Again, could be true, right? Certainly, if you don't know about something and you read a book and it helps you, that is absolutely true. But when it becomes when there's a lot of hopelessness built up in that, when it's that desperation of just one more, maybe this could help, maybe this could help. Maybe if we changed this, then my child would be different. Maybe if I try to do these things, then they'll finally accept me, or then I'll be able to feel differently about them, right? So again, some of this bargaining can be normal, but it's also a great sign. It's not necessarily bad that you're saying or trying to do any of those things, but it's a great sign of grief, right? That if I could just change this, if I could have control of this, then this other thing would happen, right? And it's a good indication for yourself that you're walking in a grief process. Depression, right? So it's going deeper than just sadness, and that hopelessness, right? This is hopeless. Things will never change. It's only going to get worse. That catastrophic thinking that you can find yourself in as an adoptive and foster parent and ruminating on. This is only going to get worse. Every time that they get upset, it's going to become violent. This is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then they're going to get arrested, and this is going to happen, right? If you find yourself in that cycle of catastrophizing, then this is a good kind of sign for you. There's something going on emotionally in you. Let's get some control of that, right? Because those things have not happened. You are just living in fear of them happening, which is normal for those emotions to kind of come up, but we don't want to let that take our thoughts and run wild and keep us in hopelessness. I can't do this anymore. Maybe we misread the signs and this wasn't meant to be, and this just isn't what we were supposed to do. Right. So those thoughts and statements can help indicate that you're kind of struggling with some depressive thoughts and feelings there. Okay. So what we're wanting to do is move toward acceptance. So what this can look like. This is my child's capability, and I will daily try to just show up and parent, right? You're understanding what your child is and is not capable of in that moment, in this season, at all, ever, right? This is what they are capable of. This is what they aren't. I can show up and I can parent every day in these ways. I cannot change them. I can only control my reactions. And I accept my child for who he or she is, right? So these are places of acceptance that we can start working toward as parents. This relationship is going to stay more surface level. That deeper attachment that I should be feeling as a parent and they should be feeling as my child just isn't there. Maybe it'll come, maybe it won't, but I can still be a parent that shows up every day and takes care of them. That is a movement toward acceptance. Okay, as you kind of walk through this grieving process. Some different types of grief. I'm just going to hit these kind of briefly. Just again, labeling can help you understand, oh, this is why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. Acute grief is kind of the normal type of grief. Got these physical, emotional, social, behavioral reactions going on in your body, some of the stuff that we talked about, but you're able to grieve and move forward, right? We don't put a time frame on grief. If you're moving forward, right? Because there is prolonged grief, which we'll get to, but you're not stuck, right? You're grieving, but you're moving forward and moving toward acceptance, moving out of that and moving toward healing. Disenfranchised grief is one I think is always super helpful in this adoption and foster world. This is a type of grief that is not conventionally recognized, right? So how common that can be for those feelings about adoption. Like, you adopted, you wanted this, just be happy. You don't need to be sad, right? What are you grieving? You gained a child. There's all this gain. What have you lost? You haven't lost anything, right? So yourself may not recognize it as grief, or other people may not. And that's that disenfranchised grief that can be very common in the adoption foster world, because it's not that typical grief that everyone else would just easily validate and recognize in you. Delayed grief, maybe you didn't grieve immediately with those changes and you realize it's coming up later, very distracted at kind of the happiness of the moments and wanting to make yourself kind of focus on that without giving space to, hey, I've also lost some things and I'm also still feeling a little sad about this. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling angry about some of these changes. I am dismissing and ignoring some of the things that are happening, because I'm just trying to be happy, right? So that delayed grief can happen. And then the prolonged grief is when that grief goes on a little too long, right? Again, there's not a set timeline on that, but you're not moving forward. You're ruminating, you're sitting in it, and it's getting worse. That's where it becomes prolonged. It's unresolved kind of grief, which can ultimately be a big factor in feelings of blocked care. So what is blocked care? This is a term that has been getting a little bit more known in the adoption world, much more popular and talked about. So you may have already heard of something like this. But this is a self-protection mechanism that comes up in your body as a parent, in your nervous system, that's activated by excessive stress. Okay, so what should happen in a typical stress cycle, right? Something happens, we feel stressed out about it. We get stressed, and then we have coping skills to settle our nervous systems back down, right? So when we're stressed, our nervous system gets activated, and that is a good thing, right? It's supposed to tell our brain to react in a certain way, tell our brain to protect ourselves, tell our brain what we need to do to calm down or to handle the stressful thing that's coming at us. But it's when we're sitting in that stress because we lack coping skills to get through our stress, or it's constant, the stressor is coming from your child on an hourly basis, and what's going on maybe in their behaviors, their emotions, kind of in the same way we talk about our kids going into their brainstem, right? And that fight, flight, or freeze always taking over. It's kind of a similar thing of what's going on inside you as a parent. You're going into that emotional reactive center because of that excessive stress and what that's doing even to your physical body, right? So so some of these strategies of blocked care is going to be what it looks like to take care of our nervous system, to tell our body, to tell our nervous system, you're not in danger. We're okay. You are safe. This is okay. And we're going to get through this, right? And you're doing things to tell your body to let go and relax. Blocked care suppresses higher brain functions needed for caregiving, and those accompanying loving and empathetic feelings, right? So just kind of what I talked about, like if you're going back into that emotional reactive center constantly, your logical brain is coming offline. All you're doing is seeing your child's behavior or how they're acting in the most negative light, as if they are attacking you, and maybe they are. They're coming at you. They're a threat to you. And then that takes away our ability to build attached, loving, empathetic feelings for them. It takes away our ability to remember and remain curious about what's going on underneath our child's behavior. Then that same thing, yeah, when that's what's happening to us when our logic center goes off, then we lose that ability to stay curious and stay empathetic to our child's struggle within themselves. Because the majority of the time, the child is fighting against what's going on inside them. They're not fighting against you. You might be the physical manifestation in front of them that is receiving the brunt of their emotion, of their anger, of their fear, of their insecurity, but it's what's going on inside them. And for parents, we have to stay pretty logically focused and dialed in to remember that that's what's actually going on inside our child, and to not let our own offenses get set off. Our nervous system in blocked care develops a defensive stance toward the child, right? So that's kind of that similar pattern of what we're talking about. A lot of families have kind of what I would describe as PTSD responses, right? That their child came home and was having hours long tantrums. And even if those tantrums aren't that long anymore, maybe they actually are getting better. Often when I'm talking with parents, they can admit they're not as long, they're not as intense. It's not the same as what we had going on before. But what's going on in your nervous system is every time that child starts to get upset, anytime their tears come on, their voice volume goes up a little bit, your nervous system triggers instantly into, oh no, here's another 3 hour long tantrum. And you start to panic, right? And your fear takes over. All that's happening. And that's that nervous system response that we need to give some time and attention to. All right. So sometimes, right, this blocked care certainly comes on, I think, from this unresolved grief in parents and not giving some attention and time to what's going on inside your own emotions and mind and body, and that building up over time. And then often kind of co-mingled all around in that as well is blocked care is going to start with this blocked trust from the child, right? That you are responding to your child's rejection, to your child's walls, to how they're pushing you away. They're not engaging into connection with you. And then it is natural, right? That if we feel rejected or pushed away, that isn't someone we usually want to draw very close to, right? So when we feel someone pushing back against us and pushing away, then we start to step away. And then the child feels you stepping away and they step away more. And then it creates this chasm, right? Where blocked care and grief just start to get complicated and unresolved and building up here in the middle. This is coming from kids, right? We know these risk factors that they get exposed to that's impacting. We know why they're acting the way they're acting, right? We know that in our minds. You've been educated at a basic level in this process to understand that. But then it's the understanding of what's going on inside your child and in those particular moments, especially when your own emotions are heightened, when you're panicked, when you're afraid, you've got your own stuff going on. It's hard to remember that. We might see these kids, some of their characteristics of block trust, right? And that could be their own grief, their own fear, readiness to defend themselves, to always feel like they're fighting against you to protect themselves, their hypervigilance, not even able to even calm down in their brains and their bodies, because if they keep moving, no one can get them, right? No one can hurt them if they keep moving. Their reactive emotions going into that brainstem and going pure kind of emotional reaction to anything that happens, the tiniest triggers, the little missteps for them become this massive deal. Their own negativity bias is the kids, everything that's been done to me. I think you're going to now do this to me. I'm afraid of you. You can't see me do anything right. You're not doing anything right. Kind of that negativity clouding all of their views and interactions with you. And their inability to notice cues of safety and enjoyment, right? So even when you're trying to create a safe and fun, protective place for them to land, they're not able to see it, right? Because of their history and their past and what's going on inside their brain. So just a reminder of kind of where sometimes this can start for a lot of parents, and then starting in with that grieving process, all of these emotions in you, your fears, your insecurities getting kind of drummed up by what your child's throwing at you. And then that blocked care taking over for you. So a little neuroscience behind the blocked care. Again, looking like prolonged stress for you as a parent disrupts that nervous system, like we talked about earlier. And then the stress on the brain affects your dopamine, your oxytocin. Okay, so these are the hormones that give us joy, right? That make us happy, that give us positive stimulation, right? With that dopamine. So the stress can shut those receptors down. So then your brain is not even receiving the things that would normally used to make you feel happy, right? So if my spouse were to walk in right here right now with a coffee and just is like, hey, thinking about you, thought you might want this, here you go, gives me a hug, right? I'm gonna feel happy, right? All those little sensors in my brain, those chemicals are going to be released to make me feel good, right? That oxytocin, that dopamine is going to start coming. When I drink that coffee, that's going to make all of those things go off, right? Well, we don't know what the caffeine's doing, but it's letting those things kind of go off. That's helping my mood. That's helping me feel happy, feel enjoyment. But if I am constantly stressed and I'm living in stress, right? My husband comes in with that cup of coffee. Hey, babe, I know you're having a rough week. Just wanted to bring this. And I'm like, I'm busy. Okay, thank you. And I grab it and I'm like, go. Like, I'm not able to pause and stop and look at that because of the stress that's going on in my body. And when I'm sitting in prolonged stress, that doesn't stop. And our brain receptors start to shut down a little bit of, oh, we're not needed. This isn't happening. So we don't need to function anymore, right? It's kind of some stuff that's going on, even in this chemical level in our brains. So for you as a parent, if you're like, why can't I feel happier about this child? Why can't I feel differently? Sometimes it's truly because what's going on a brain level. So it's reworking through these things that we'll talk about in a moment to get those receptors started back up, to get new ones flaring, to start to recognize that oxytocin and that dopamine that should be running in your brain and is running in your brain. Also on a neuroscience level, self-protection mode really stops that complex thinking, right? And emotions are taking over. When we're in a protective mode, right? Just like we talk with you about what's going on in your child, right? Their brainstem, their fight, flight, or freeze gets triggered when they feel afraid, when they feel insecure, when they feel out of control. So they flip into protective mode. Everything in our brain, this is a wonderful function of how our bodies are made, is the front part, that logical part of our brain shuts down and we focus in back here because our body's going, you're unsafe, you just have to protect yourself. Do anything you can to keep yourself safe, right? Which is a good thing if you're actually in a dangerous situation. But when you're not, looks real inappropriate and it's really hard to handle, right? When that's coming from your child. It happens to you too as a parent, right? When your kid has been coming at you verbally or they're shutting you down, they withdraw, they're rejecting you, they're pushing you away. Or you're really just struggling to connect with them and you can't figure out how to make that connection work. Your body goes into self-protective mode and you start living out of this brainstem. Your logical brain isn't being as engaged, so you're not curious behind your child's behavior. You're not maintaining empathy. You're not able to remind yourself of all this training that you've gotten, right? And your emotions are taking over. So then every tiny little thing that your child does, that's triggering your nervous system, right? Kind of like with that PTSD with those tantrums, right? As soon as your child starts to cry about something, or you think they're going to, or something is happening that you think, oh no, my kid's about to go off, then your nervous system kicks in and takes over that. So then we're no longer living really in the reality of the situation, and we're fully operating in self-protective emotional behavior. So is your child, right? So you can imagine, or you've experienced what happens when two people are trying to interact. They're both in self-protective mode against the other one, right? This is breaking down that relationship even further. So what do we do about it? Okay, well, we'll do that just a second. Sorry, first, we're going to kind of drive this in a little bit more. Here's some 10 signs of blocked care. Okay, so these are statements as you read through them, might be ones that really resonate with you. So again, I'm challenging you, if you have your phone there, if you have a piece of paper, write down any of these that kind of really stick out to you and go, oh yeah, that is how I feel. Wow, that really is how I feel. Again, so labeling it, putting some words is very validating, helps you know there isn't something wrong with you. There probably needs something wrong with your child. This is the cycle that you guys have found yourself in, and we can break it. We can get through it. So one, I'm just going to read these through for you. Caught up in coping with your child's behavior and lose curiosity about the meaning behind it. Two, you feel defensive and guard yourself from rejection. Three, you feel burned out, chronically overwhelmed and fatigued. Four, you feel resentment toward one or more of your children or your situation as a whole. You may even regret adopting or fostering. Five, you feel irritable with other family and friends. Six, you isolate yourself. Seven, you become cynical about helpful ideas. Eight, you feel you have lost compassion, which leads to shame. Nine, you experience a crisis of faith or a challenge of a personal belief system. And 10, you don't feel real pleasure in parenting anymore, or maybe you never did. Okay. These I'm going to do just really quickly. I think what's important here with types of blocked care, they can be stage specific, moments specific, kind of this more acute periods of time where you're feeling this blocked care, or you can have chronic, right, where you're this is bringing up, instead of it just being about what's going on right there with your child, it's also triggering stuff from your own background and your own childhood trauma or stress, right? It's things that are happening with your child are reminding you of stuff that happened when you were a child or in your home and the family that you grew up in or the circumstances that you've been in before. And so you're not only dealing with the stress of their child, but you're dealing with the stress of that past that maybe hasn't been worked through. And it can be child specific, right? So it's just really focused at one child in particular. Things are going fine with the other kids, the other child you adopted, but this one child is the one that's really triggering all of that in you and making that really challenging and difficult, and that blocked care coming up. Okay, so we're gonna spend the rest of this time here talking about what you can do, right? So what are some practical things? I think it's very easy to listen to what I'm gonna talk about here and dismiss it of like, well, what does it matter if I put labels to it? Okay, cool, I'm in denial. Like, what does that really do? That doesn't make me feel better, right? But to stop and recognize how that does, right? Instead of just wandering in, I feel mad, I feel sad, um, I feel disappointed. Life isn't fair. I can't believe this is happening. This isn't what I signed up for, right? When we aren't looking at those thoughts and emotions more detailed, right, and going deeper than those statements that I just said, then that's just where you're going to live. And there's not going to be change. You're not going to find healing, right? But when we can stop and look deeper into those, okay, I'm mad, but what am I mad about? What's happening underneath that? Why am I so mad? Oh, it's because I used to have afternoons to myself, and now this kid is here disrupting my time. This is where I stayed on top of my stuff. This is where I remembered everything I needed to remember and got my chores done and got my task list done. And now I can't do any of that. And so I'm behind on everything. And people are getting mad at me because I'm not staying on top of my things. And then I'm feeling embarrassed because everyone's looking at me and my spouse is upset. I'm not getting stuff done around the house, right? And that's where that spiral starts. And now I'm just mad about it because this kid has disrupted that, right? But when we can stop and go, ooh, okay, is this actually about grief, right? From that loss, that time used to be yours. You had a process, you had a routine and a rhythm that was working for you, and now that doesn't work anymore because it's not the circumstance it used to be in. But when we can stop and acknowledge the reason why, what's going on underneath, then we can start to deal with that. That's what we can process through. You can heal. You can start to either find solutions for the problems that that loss is creating, but acknowledging it, speaking it out to yourself in prayer, to others, to a therapist, to friends, even to your own kids sometimes, maybe. Hey, Betty, I know I get really mad about this stuff. I just want to say this isn't actually really about you. This is about me not being able to get my things done. I need a little bit of space. Can we talk about a better way to do this? When you get home from school, I know you just want to be with me all day long. I need 30 minutes where you're going to sit and you're going to do an activity by yourself. We're going to set the timer. You're going to give me space for 30 minutes because I need 30 minutes to think through what this evening's going to look like and settle my thoughts down and get some of the stuff done that I used to get done. Right. So when we can recognize that's what's actually happening here, you can find real solutions potentially to that instead of just being mad and being upset and kind of staying in where those emotions are. So it's important to acknowledge your grief, right? And see where maybe some of the feelings and the experiences that you're having is coming from that loss. And it's actually grief that you're walking through. So what does it look like to move toward acceptance because you're upset that this child isn't the child you thought you were going to get? They aren't doing the things you need them to do. They aren't connecting in the way that you need them to connect. So what does it look like to start to move toward accepting that reality and adjusting what our relationship and what your thoughts are? Because you can't instantly change your child. Can't wave a wand and they're suddenly different. It takes time for them. What you have control over is you. And that's part of that acceptance. Even understanding that separation and what you do and don't have control over can be a part of that acceptance process and the loss and the grief that you're feeling. Seeking a therapist, finding a professional to help you walk through that. There are professionals that are trained specifically to work through grief. Certainly talking with someone who's adoption competent is going to understand that process for you. I'm happy and here to help you find somebody to talk to. Not every therapist is good. Okay, so you might say, I've gone to a therapist and didn't help. Okay, that wasn't the right therapist. They didn't have the right model. They didn't have the right approach. Wasn't a good fit for you. That's okay. We can try a new one. Okay, so not all therapists and not all therapy is the same. Again, adjusting those expectations versus reality, right, is a way to start to work a little bit through that grief. That's the loss there. I thought I was getting this, but I got this. And there's great loss in between those two things. And it's okay to recognize that, to be mad about that, to be sad, to be depressed about that, to feel down, all of those emotions. And it's acknowledging those feelings. And then we're able to start trying to kind of move forward toward understanding the reality and accepting that can help with that grief and loss journey. Some ways to address blocked care. This is a big challenge. I think a really, really, really important one that please, if you do nothing else from this, maybe this is the one to do. Sit down. I challenge you to write down 20 things. Okay, that number is important. 20 things that give you joy. 20 things that make you laugh, that make you smile, that make you feel a little bit better, that lift your mood even just a little bit. The reason I say 20 is because it's hard to do that, right? So 20 makes you sit down and makes you really think about it. If I said 5, you could just probably like rattle a couple of things off really quickly, and then you don't have to actually spend much time stopping and tuning into yourself. What are things that used to make me feel better and feel joy in my life, right? So I kind of mentioned earlier, coming out of college, all my friends moved away, found myself in a lot of grief of just the change. I'm an extrovert. I didn't have people and community like I used to have. So I had to stop and go, okay, what are the things that I can do by myself that make me feel happy and that I enjoy doing? And I wrote a list of those things down. So that I wasn't just sitting in my sadness and my grief and my loss of the community that I had, but while I waited for new community to build up for me, I was finding joy. Okay, so stopping, circumstances aren't the same for what you're going through, but the same ideas here. What is a list of 20 things that bring you joy? And they can be little, right? They can be seeing a sunset. They can be going for a walk outside. It can be sitting on a porch swing somewhere. It can be just drinking a coffee, drinking a drink that makes you feel good, right? That brings that peace and that calm inside you. And then do one of those every day. right? So that's why we want little things on there. It's not just, oh, when I travel to Europe, right? Can't do that all the time. Travel can be an idea on there, but what are things that are practical that you can do on a more regular basis to at least bring your nervous system peace and joy? Because when we're feeling joy, we don't feel that fear, right? That's not what's taking over our body. That joy is what's taking over our body. And it signals to your body, you're okay. You're not in danger. No one's coming at you right now. You're okay. So these very feels simple, and it feels simple like something you can just dismiss, right? But it makes a difference. Okay. So listing out things that make you feel joy and do at least one of them every day. Remembering your motivation, remembering the early days with your child, right? So why did you get started in this process in the first place? What were you really looking for? What drew you into adoption and doing this process or fostering? Remembering early days with that child, right? If there was a time that was good, there was a time that felt exciting, even if it was only back at referral. And the first time you saw that picture and got to open that email and read all that information about that child, the first time that you were told that kid is available to come into your home. Remembering those early days of joy and reminding yourself of that. If you have a physical reminder of that, like a photo, an email, a screenshot of the text message you sent to your mom. Oh my gosh, we just found out who the child is. Something to remind you of the joy that you did feel toward this child can start to break out of that negative emotion and cognitive place that you find yourself in. Okay, how to care for your nervous system, creating habits, right? That bring peace, that bring joy, right? So building in routines. Like I said earlier, right? If it's this, I used to have some time to myself. I don't get it anymore. Hey, kiddo, the new routine, the new habit here is going to be when we get home from school, I get this space. And when I get that 30 minutes of space, this is what I do. I sit down in this corner of my room that feels really peaceful, sit down with a cup of tea, whatever it is, and have a minute to find some peace, right? So creating some habits and things that you can do. This could be caring for your body, having a healthy mindset, right? Making sure you're hydrating well, you're eating well, you're moving your body, right? So just focusing on that health and creating space for those habits to either come back in that have been lost, right? Maybe that's some of the loss. I used to be able to educate my exercise class, and now I can't do that anymore because this kid can't be left alone for 5 minutes. I can't leave the house, space for that. What can you do and create around to build some of those things back into your life? Practicing gratitude, right? Again, easy thing to dismiss, but stopping and being thankful is positive, right? We are thankful for positive things. And so that brings in a reminder to our nervous system. We have good things going on. We are not living in a war zone. It is not danger. I am safe. I'm okay. I am grateful for this. And especially if you can start to try to find places. At first, you may not be able to find something you're grateful about your child, right? Sometimes that can be hard for parents, just depending on where you are emotionally and kind of where you're going with them and your blocked care. But you could be thankful for something around them and try to challenge yourself to try to find something you're grateful for in that child. Hey, I got a smile instead of a snarl today. It was just one, but I got one. Hey, we're going to be grateful for that. We're going to stop and think about that did happen, right? And giving attention and space to that instead of the 100% dwelling on all of the negative things is at least one more positive thing that's happening that can start to signal to your body that you are okay, you are safe, and you can start to calm down. Laughing more. Obviously, again, when we're laughing and being playful, there isn't a lot of space for fear, insecurity, all the other negative things that are going on. So finding something that helps you laugh, even if it's just a silly video online, some comedian set some, funny animal video, whatever that is, something simple and easy to kind of help make you laugh. And building some routines and habits around that to get that going more regularly in your life, especially if you know that that's lacking. And then if you can find something to laugh with your kiddo, right? So maybe your kid would also laugh at that funny video, or maybe they would just roll their eyes and try to keep an attitude because they don't want you to know that they, would want to engage with you at all, right? These things that these kids do. So maybe what you have control over is, I'm gonna watch this funny video. I'm gonna put my phone out here a little bit so you can see it too, right? And maybe they start to engage, maybe they start to laugh, maybe you get a little bit of a smile out of them, right? To start to bring positive interactions back with your child as well. That mindfulness is a self-awareness, being aware of what's going on, right? Especially if that's a hard thing for you to do. If you don't feel like you're, more emotionally attuned, don't feel like you're somebody that likes to dwell on those things a lot, right? That's a challenge for you. Then this is the practice of mindfulness, of getting yourself to sit down and do that. This doesn't mean that you become this overly emotional, only thinks and talks about their emotions person, right? But you're able to stop and go, what is going on inside my body? What is my nervous system trying to tell me? Where am I getting set off and triggered and dysregulated? And what does that look like? How can I know that I'm stressed? How can I know that I'm dysregulated right now? Because I'm really good at masking that. That's been something I've really had to do. Really good at kind of masking over the things that are challenging and to stop and to see, okay, these are signs in my body when I'm stressed, right? When I feel my shoulders starting to come up and I'm kind of hunching and like bracing for the stress that's coming at me as I'm working, right? That's a sign for me. Okay, what am I stressed out and overwhelmed about? Okay, I need to relax my body, right? That's not how I should be. Get up and take a walk and relax. Kind of practicing that mindfulness of tuning into yourself. Decreasing your mental load as best as you're able to, right? Sometimes there's only so much we can do with that. But how do you simplify your life right now in this season? Maybe you're giving up activities for yourself, giving up activities for your kids. Hey, kiddos, we're going to be involved in one thing this year because that's all our family has the space for. Because I can't be running around to 500 activities a week because of what it's doing to me. And it's okay to take care of yourself because it makes you a more healed and helped person, right? So finding ways to decrease that mental load. How can your partner, like how can your spouse help you? How can somebody outside your family help you? How can you get better at asking for help, right? Things at that mindfulness, right? What can you do to simplify your thoughts and simplify your mind so that your nervous system isn't constantly in do mode and it can't calm down, right? You could be creating the place where you are staying hyper aware, hyper vigilant, and stressing your own nervous system out. Finding comfort in beauty. What is beautiful? What feels comforting to you? What do you like to look at that brings you joy, right? This could be something on your list of joy. Hey, I love this artist. I want to look at their pictures online, or um, I just need to be outside. I need to see something. So I've picked a few places in town where I can go and see more of the land, see more of the trees, the nature that I like to see. I can always see the sunset or the sunrise here. So I'm going to make sure I'm taking a walk there at least once a week, right? So that I can see that, because that brings me comfort and beauty. It tells my nervous system, it tells my body, you're okay and you're safe. Surrounding yourself, of course, with life-giving people. Being aware of who's around you and what's being fed into you. How are you being supported and how are you not? Maybe that means you need to walk away from some people. You need to put that relationship on pause for just a little bit until you're at a better place, so that those kinds of relationships are not adding to the stress that you're already experiencing in your home. Connecting with your child, finding one fun thing that you can do with them, maybe not daily, right? Maybe you're not at a place where you can find that daily, but maybe weekly, right? Setting some of those goals. Maybe do one fun thing. And maybe that's something that my kid likes to do. Maybe somehow find a combination of something you guys both like to do, or a little bit of his thing, a little bit of your thing. Hey, I like to be outside. My kid likes to play basketball. I don't want to play basketball with him, but I can sit next to the court. I can read my book and I can kind of be in the general area while the kid plays basketball, right? And we're here together because that makes room for connection, helps you guys have the capacity and the ability to maybe feel like you're connecting with one another. And that might make all the difference, right? Maybe not all the difference, but can make a lot of the difference for you, that you're finding one positive interaction and influence that you can have going on at least weekly, moving toward daily, moving toward more than once a day, right? And building up that relationship and giving space for that connection. Working at regulating together. If your kid's stressed out, you're probably stressed out, right? And whatever those interactions are. So you stopping to say, you know what? Hey, kiddo, we got to take a pause. We got to take a time out. You're upset. I'm upset. I can see you're upset because you're acting like this. I'm upset because I'm acting like this. We need a pause. I'm going to go take a walk. What do you need to do? Modeling not only you regulating yourself for your own benefit, right? Because you're worked up. I'm sure you want to calm down. Regulating yourself, also modeling that regulation for your child. Because some of the problems can be with our kiddos, they don't know how to regulate. They don't know how to calm down, even when they get agitated, when they get worked up. So you're modeling and teaching that for them, even when you're regulating yourself. So thinking about ways that you can not just, okay, I need a moment to calm down. How can I encourage my child to do that as well? Finding unexpected yeses, ways to kind of change. Hey, I'm typically the no mom, or my kid's always asking to do crazy stuff, and I don't want to, I never want to do any of it, right? But recognizing that in yourself, and how can I say yes to my kid today? Even if it's, can we go to the library? No, can't go to the library. Instead, it's a yes, we can go this weekend. Yes, we can go tomorrow. Yes, we can do that later today, right? So it's a change, right? The same thing's happening, but the way that we're delivering it to our kid, it's not leading with a no, it's leading with a yes. How that can change yourself and how that can change that relationship and ability to connect with your kiddo. They're hearing yes from you instead of no makes all the difference for them and can make the change in their attitude and how they're approaching you or how they respond to what you're saying, right? If your no is what starts, is a trigger for them and starts all the dysregulation, if we're leading with a yes, then maybe we're preventing some of that. Finding ways to give comforting touch to your child that's appropriate and works for them, given their history and their background, but touch is a really connecting habit. So I've talked with families a lot where they're like, they don't want to. The thought of like giving their child a hug is like something they can't even do right now. Finding ways to do that. What is touch that can happen? Um, that's something you're able to do and can certainly bridge some connection with your child. And doing acts of kindness for your kiddo, even if they don't deserve it, right? Even if their attitude and their behavior has been whatever it is, right? Deal with that, work through the consequences of that behavior, but then still, how do I act kindly, right? Even if I don't feel like I'm loving this child well, how can I be kind, right? We can be kind to anybody if we want to. Okay, so just ending here on this resources page, Melissa Corkum and Lisa Qualls are two of the ladies that really took this concept of blocked care specifically and have kind of brought it out into this adoption space. They wrote the book Reclaim Compassion that I have listed there. So it's a great book to read through. They also are doing some of their own stuff. So you can get involved in their organizations and their services. Melissa, they are both adoptive parents. I believe Melissa maybe was adopted herself. They are both adoptive parents that walked through all of this with blocked care, worked through and have come out the other side of it. And so they want to help families. Melissa's organization is focused a little bit more on that nervous system care. I know she does something specific with sound and how do we use kind of our senses to signal to our nervous system, you are okay, we're okay. Um, Lisa's is a little bit more maybe clinical, supportive group type work. So just for kind of two different, slightly different approaches to what they're trying to do for families. Reading their book, we also use their workbook for our support group on blocked care. We offer that in the fall and the spring. We just wrapped our spring group. So we'll be starting up another one in the fall. Anyone's welcome to join at any point when we've got those offered. I'll send that out in my seasonal newsletters. But you can always check the nightlight.org/PACC page on the adoptive parents one for what our current support groups are, what our current webinars are. That's always a great place to go for resources if you're not sure what's being offered right now. I always have that there. You can also email me. My email's on the screen. If you need help, if you want to talk through any of this deeper to see how do I apply this truly to me and my situation in my life, reach out at any time. That's what we're here for, to help you work through this and to help support you. Caring for your own emotions, caring for your own grief, and caring for you if you're walking through blocked care. So, thank you so much for being here with us today. Again, reach out anytime that you need some help and support.